In the timeline of a disappearance, there is a specific moment that investigators fear most. It is not the moment the phone stops ringing. It is not even the moment a report is filed. It is the moment when a story one told with perfect confidence stops making sense. On November 30th, 2025, in Fort Worth, Texas, the night began with music. It began with a party. It was the kind of evening that happens thousands of times across the city. Friends. Acquaintance, the noise of conversation, the ease of a hallowed season just beginning to settle in. Two men left that party together. Only one of them would make it home. For 22 days, silence covered the fate of the other. 22 days of unanswered texts. 22 days of a family waiting for a sound at the door. And 22 days where a secret lay buried in the shallow soil of a wooded lot in Denton County. This is not just a story about a crime. It is a story about the fragile nature of trust. It is about how quickly a handshake can turn into a goodbye, and how the earth, eventually, refuses to keep our secrets. Welcome to Quiet Crime Stories. To understand the tragedy, we must first understand the normalcy that concealed it. Late November in North Texas is a time of transition. The heat of the year has finally broken, and the nights carry a chill that drives people indoors, into warmth, into gathering spots. On November 30th, a Sunday, the atmosphere in Fort Worth was focused on the approaching holidays. In a residence, somewhere in the city's sprawling grid, a party was underway. We don't know the playlist. We don't know the specific conversations. But we know the dynamic. These events are social contract spaces where guards are lowered, where the sharp edges of the outside world are softened by familiarity. Among the guests was a man whose name has been whispered by advocacy groups, but remains officially shielded by the medical examiner's protocols. For the purpose of this story, we will simply call him the victim. He was there, alive, part of the noise in the life of the room. Also present was 23-year-old Alexander James Nicholas. By all accounts, the interaction between them was not hostile. There was no public shouting match reported, no breaking of glass. This is often the most chilling aspect of retrospective analysis, the absence of a warning sign. Violence does not always announce itself with a scream. Sometimes, it walks out the front door with you, looking like a friend. When they left together, witnesses saw nothing to fear. It was just two people exiting a party, perhaps heading to another location, perhaps heading home. But as the taillights faded into the Fort Worth night, a clock began to tick. A window of opportunity was opening for one man and closing forever for the other. At the time, no one watching them leave realized they were witnessing the final scene of a life. Monday, December 1st. This is the day that haunts families. It is the day of the maybe. Maybe he's just busy. Maybe his phone died. Maybe he slept in. In the psychology of a disappearance, this first 24 hours acts as a buffer. It protects the mind from the unthinkable. We are conditioned to believe in routine. People have jobs. People have habits. When those habits are broken, our first instinct is not to assume a homicide. It is to invent a rational excuse. But for the people waiting for the victim, the silence was having the opposite effect. It wasn't comforting. It was heavy. Audio, faint, muffled vibration sound of a phone. It stops abruptly. Text messages went from casual to concerned. Calls went straight to voicemail. The digital footprint, that constant stream of data we all leave behind like breadcrumbs, had simply stopped. Silence is a sound, too, if you listen closely enough. In a city of nearly 1 million people, the sudden absence of one person creates a void that is felt immediately by those closest to them. By Tuesday, December 2nd, the excuses had run out. The maybe had dissolved into something is wrong. The decision to go to the police is never made lightly. It is an admission of fear. It is the moment you acknowledge that you are no longer in control of the situation. Family or friends walked into the station or picked up the phone, and they formally filed a missing person report. They likely hoped for a quick resolution, understanding à los chiffons. But looking back, we can see the tragedy was already written. The timeline had already fractured. The question wasn't where he was going. The question was whether he had ever arrived. Most missing person cases are resolved within 48 hours. The teenager returns home. The estranged partner calls. The confusion clears, but the Fort Worth Police Department noticed something different here. We don't know the specific detail that tipped the scale. Perhaps it was the victim's history of reliability. Perhaps it was a car found where it shouldn't be, or not found at all. Or perhaps it was the absolute totality of the silence. Whatever the trigger, the file did not stay in the missing persons stack for long. It was passed to the homicide unit. This is a critical procedural shift. Missing persons detectives look for people. Homicide detectives look for suspects. The mindset changes from rescue to reconstruction. They began to build a timeline of those final hours on November 30th. They worked backward from the silence. Where was he last seen? The party, who was he with? Alexander James Nicholas. This is where the investigative lens narrowed. In criminal psychology, the last known companion is always the starting point. It doesn't necessarily mean guilt-innocent people drop friends off all the time. But it means you hold the key to the timeline. You possess the final verified image of the missing person. Detectives needed to speak with Nicholas. They needed to hear his story. And this is where the psychological game of chess truly began. When investigators bring you in for questioning in a missing person case, they are not just listening to your words. They are watching your hands. They are listening to the pauses between your sentences. They are measuring your helpfulness against your anxiety. But the last companion always holds the key. Who can you trust when the timeline fractures? Alexander Nicholas agreed to speak. He provided a statement. According to police reports, his account was simple. It was reassuring. It was a narrative of safety. He claimed that, after they left the party, he had driven the victim to a specific location. He claimed that when he drove away, the victim was alive. He was fine. He was someone else's responsibility now. This is a common psychological defense mechanism. It is an attempt to close the loop. By offering a specific drop-off point, the suspect attempts to transfer the burden of the mystery. I brought him here. What happened after is not my fault. It creates a geographical boundary. Here is where I was with him. There is where I left him. For a moment, the story sits in the air. It is plausible. Friends drop friends off. People part ways. But modern detectives do not rely on faith. They rely on verification. Every story has structural beams. In 2025, those beams are digital. Cell phone tower pings, GPS data from vehicles. Surveillance cameras on street corners, doorbells, and businesses. When Nicholas gave that location, he likely didn't realize he was handing investigators the very tool they would use to dismantle his defense. He gave them a specific where and a specific when, and investigators went to work. They pulled the data, they watched the footage. They traced the invisible lines that connect us to the physical world. They compared the story Nicholas told to the story the data told. The police have been careful with their words. They have not released the exact nature of the evidence. They simply stated that evidence contradicted the suspect's statement. But let us pause and consider what that implies in a modern investigation. If you say you were at a gas station at midnight, but your phone pings off a tower 10 miles away in a wooded sector, that is a contradiction. If you say you dropped someone off, but surveillance shows your car never left the road, that is a contradiction. If you say the victim walked away, but forensic data suggests the victim's phone never moved from your vehicle, that is a contradiction. This is the turning point. This is the moment the missing person investigation effectively ended, and the homicide investigation began even before a body was found. The realization is quiet, but devastating. The person sitting across from you is lying. And people generally lie to the police for only one reason: self-preservation. The tension in the investigation room would have shifted instantly. The questioning likely changed from open-ended, "Can you help us remember?" to specific, pressurized inquiries. "Are you sure that's where you went, Alexander? Why does your car's GPS show you in North Fort Worth?" The pressure builds not through shouting, but through the slow, methodical presentation of facts that do not fit the lie. Nicholas was now in the crosshairs. He lied. But the truth was still hidden. Where did it lead? Days turned into weeks. The earth waited. Monday, December 22nd, 3 days before Christmas. The call came in Or perhaps the search team simply stopped walking. In a wooded area, in North Fort Worth, in Denton County, the investigation came to its heartbreaking conclusion. Officers discovered a shallow grave. There is a profound finality to those words. Shallow grave. It speaks of haste. It speaks of panic. It speaks of a desperate, terrifying struggle to hide a reality that has become undeniable. The transition from missing person to homicide victim is instant. The hope that had sustained the family for 22 days was extinguished. The crime scene technicians would have moved in. The area would be cordoned off. The woods, usually silent, would be filled with the artificial light of generator-powered lamps. They were there to recover the stolen son, the stolen friend. We must consider the psychological weight on the officers standing there. They had been chasing a ghost for weeks. Now, they had found the man. It wasn't the outcome anyone wanted, but it was the answer they needed. The discovery validated the detectives' instincts. It confirmed the contradictions in the suspect's story, and it shifted the entire legal framework of the case. There was no longer a need to ask where the victim was. The only question left was why, and the man who held that answer was already in their sights. With the discovery of the body, the timeline snapped shut. Fort Worth police arrested 23-year-old Alexander James Nicholas. The charges were no longer theoretical. He was taken into custody, the weight of the shallow grave now resting squarely on his shoulders. In the public statements that followed, the police were professional but direct. They noted the contradiction in his story. They noted the discovery of the remains. They linked the departure from the party to the burial in the woods. But even in the arrest, there was a hesitation in the narrative. Police stated that the investigation was ongoing. They mentioned that more arrests are possible. This is a detail that lingers. Does it imply an accomplice? Did someone help dig the grave? Did someone help hide the car? Or does it simply mean that others knew and did nothing? The psychology of complicity is complex. Fear can silence a witness just as effectively as loyalty. If others are involved, they are currently waiting, wondering if Nicholas will speak, wondering if the same digital dragnet that caught him is currently tightening around them. For Nicholas, the reality of the situation has shifted from managing a lie to facing a life sentence. The narrative of safety he spun in the interview room has been replaced by the hard evidence of forensic reality. He thought he had buried the truth. Instead, he had only planted the seeds of his own capture. As we stand here today, the case is technically solved in terms of custody, yet psychologically, it remains wide open. We know the who, we know the where. We know the when, but we do not know the why. What happens between two acquaintances leaving a party that leads to murder? Was it a sudden argument that spiraled out of control? A flashpoint of violence that Nicholas tried to cover up in a panic? Was it premeditated? Did he lure the victim away with the intent to harm? The distinction matters. It matters to the law, and it matters to the grieving family. A crime of passion suggests a loss of control. A planned execution suggests a darkness that was there all along, hiding behind a smile at the party. We also await the final word from the medical examiner. The cause of death will tell us the final chapter of the victim's life. It will tell us if he suffered. It will tell us if he fought back. We do not know why he made a choice that ended another's life. This is the question that haunts everyone who loved him. Until those details are read in court, the story remains a collection of fragments, held together by grief. The impact of a crime like this extends far beyond the police tape. Consider the other guests at that party on November 30th. They are now replaying every memory. Did Alexander look angry? Did the victim look worried? Could we have stopped them from leaving? Guilt is a heavy companion. It settles on the survivors, the ones who stayed behind, the ones who didn't get in the car. Consider the families. For the victim's family, Christmas will never be the same. The season of joy has been permanently branded with the date of the discovery. December 22nd, the day the hope died. And consider the community. We tell ourselves that we are safe if we follow the rules, if we stick with friends, if we trust people we know. But this case dismantles that safety. The danger didn't come from a stranger in a dark alley. It came from the person in the passenger seat. It came from a known face. That is the quiet terror of this case. It reminds us that we never truly know what is happening in the minds of the people around us. We see the mask. We hear the laughter at the party. We rarely see what lies beneath until it is too late. Alexander James Nicholas sits in a cell, awaiting the slow grind of the judicial process. The evidence against him, the contradictions, the timeline, the grave will be laid out, piece by piece. The Fort Worth police continue their work. They are still digging not in the earth this time, but in the data, looking for anyone else who might have held a shovel or held a secret. For the rest of us, the story of the Fort Worth shallow grave is a somber reminder. We live our lives on a thin layer of trust. We trust the driver. We trust the friend. We trust that the night will end in sleep, not in silence. But sometimes, the trust is misplaced. Sometimes, the party ends and the darkness begins. As you go about your life, as you leave your gatherings, as you say your goodbyes, pay attention. Watch the people around you. Because every mystery starts with a moment that looked completely normal until it wasn't.